In the third year of being Solomon Patel's lover, I saved enough money and decided to break up with him. That night, with a small bag on my back and a heart full of joy, I bid him farewell. Solomon Patel, I'm leaving now, take care of yourself. He sat silently on the balcony, smoking, without saying a word. Just as I grabbed the doorknob, a row of crazy scrolling comments suddenly appeared before my eyes. Baby, you should take a look at your husband, he's about to hit max darkness levels. He thinks you're going to find that scummy man, once you step out that door, he'll imprison you. Hurry and apologize to him, he'd give his life for you. You don't want to be tied up in a little black room every day for a check, do you? Huh? I stiffly turned around, and amidst the swirling smoke, Solomon's gaze was fixed firmly on me. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I was so scared that my legs went weak, nearly kneeling before him. What on earth are these comments? Solomon crossed his legs, his expression cold, extinguishing the cigarette in the ashtray before him. He casually adjusted his high-end suit and prepared to stand up and walk towards me. There was no time to think. The flattery I had honed over the past 3 years spilled out. Break up? No way. You've pampered me for 3 years, who would treat me like a treasure if I leave you? No break up, no break up. Solomon paused momentarily. I hurriedly sat back beside him, took a deep breath, and looked at him. I'm just kidding, I didn't mean to leave, ha ha ha. A flicker of surprise crossed Solomon's usually indifferent face, but his tone remained flat. Are you sure? I replied, yes, yes, yes. He lifted his eyelids, quickly shifting his gaze away from me. Do as you wish, I'm going to the company. After saying that, he stood up from the sofa, picked up his coat, and left without looking back. I immediately felt as if my strength had drained away, collapsing onto the sofa, patting my chest. Comments. The male lead ran off pretty fast when he heard his honey wanted to break up. Oh yeah, he almost tripped when he left just now, I captured it. What is all this? I reached out to grab the empty comments, but found I couldn't catch them. Amidst my confusion, I quickly realized, I smacked my thigh. Hey, comments, didn't you hear? He just said, do as you wish, how could he possibly imprison me in a little black room for a check? You must be kidding. The comments quickly began to scroll violently again. You didn't see it, when he left just now, he was pretending not to care, but he was probably grinding his teeth. Baby, he thinks you're going to find that scummy man, so he's already feeling insecure. He just ordered ropes and little whips and other tools. And the prison room is already under construction. Don't believe it? Go check his study computer. Hasn't Patel Corporation developed a piece of land in some deserted area? They started work tonight. Patel Corporation has thousands of branches, and starting construction is common. Are you dumb? Which good guy CEO chooses a deserted place for business? Reading this, my scalp went numb. Run away? Don't even think about it. With his methods, you could escape to the ends of the earth, and he'd still find you. I pushed open the study door and saw that his study light was still on. His computer had never been secured against me. Sure enough. Comments, save my life, I'll kneel for you. I was with Solomon purely to dig into his pockets. 3 years ago, I was still the carefree young master of the Johnson family, commanding respect in City A. But when the real young master returned, my fake young master identity was exposed. And I had to leave the Johnson family empty-handed. If it were just me, I could easily find a job to make ends meet. Unfortunately, I was also taking care of my mother, who had become a vegetative state due to her actions, my biological mother. The very nanny from the Johnson family who swapped us as infants. Her disgraceful deeds stirred up a media frenzy, leading to her being scorned by thousands. And she suffered a stroke on the spot, becoming a vegetative person. I suppose I'm quite unfortunate. Just as I recognized my biological mother, she became a vegetable. After leaving the Johnson family, I worked 3 jobs a day, taking care of my mother while trying to make a living. At a drinking party, I drank desperately and laughed, getting completely drunk. Finally, when it ended, the manager, hunched over, signed a deal with the client, beaming with joy. Before leaving, he patted my shoulder and said appreciatively, "You're working so hard, next year, I'll promote you to head of the planning team with double the salary." I was puzzled. Next year? Why did it turn into next year again? My mom wouldn't make it to next year. I leaned against a tree on the roadside, vomiting my guts out. A dark-colored Maybach slowly stopped beside me, the window rolled down. And I saw the person in the back seat, handsome features, sharp contours, an extremely good-looking but cold expression. It was Mr. Patel from the drinking party earlier. He looked at me, his eyes calm and unruffled. With his long fingers, he handed me a silk handkerchief. Short on money? Looking at this $1 million car, I smiled and said, yes, I am. My mom wouldn't last through this month without going back to the hospital for a respirator. Solomon Patel threw his conditions at me through the car window. Without thinking twice, I agreed to be his canary. I also had a condition: the relationship would last for 3 years. In the cold mansion, I tried my best to please him, fulfilling his intense desires. I called out in tune with him, devoid of feelings, all technique. I sought his wealth, he sought my beauty. We both got what we needed, each with our own agenda. Until that day. After a night of heavy drinking, Solomon suddenly confessed that he wanted to marry me. I was at a loss, looking at his emotional expression. Fearing I had gone too far, after all, I was just pretending. So I acted drunk, called out someone else's name to agree to his confession, and even wanted to kiss him. That was the first time he exploded in anger at me. After that, he didn't even go home. After that incident, his attitude towards me seemed even colder. I didn't take it to heart because I was going to leave sooner or later. Thinking of the comments saying Solomon Patel would imprison me and tie me up in a little black room every day to check my qualifications, I shivered. I couldn't bear that. The current frequency was already my limit. Every day? Moreover, if I was imprisoned, what would happen to my mother, who was in a vegetative state? That was a price I couldn't afford. After thinking for a while, I opened my phone and transferred all my savings from the past 3 years to Rick Johnson, the true heir of the Johnson family. P.S. The debt is paid off, we owe each other nothing. A wave of relief washed over me. The guilt that had tormented me for 3 years vanished at that moment. After all, I had already made enough money, so I thought I might as well observe for a while. I would figure out what this strange comment section was all about before looking for a chance to escape. That night, Solomon was changing his shoes at the entrance, his brows and eyes showing faint fatigue. I stepped forward and cleared my throat. Ahem, honey, you're back. It wasn't that I wanted to call him that, but being Solomon's canary required it. As a straight man, calling another man honey felt awkward at first. But he gave me so much that I gradually got used to it. Baby, he loves you so much, he's about to fall apart. You should comfort him quickly. I was shocked. He only ever put his head down and worked hard. Finishing and then going to work, was this how one loves someone? But to avoid a tragic fate, I decided to comfort him as the comments suggested. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made such a big joke with you. Look at what I'm wearing? Come on, honey. On the silk bed, I lay back, wearing a sheer white shirt with the buttons undone. A delicate gold chain trailing down into the collar, tempting him closer. Solomon stood at the door, staring at the gold chain under my shirt, his Adam's apple moving wildly, his eyes bloodshot. But he remained frozen. Comment section. Baby, don't just lie there, you need to turn up the heat a bit more, he's about to explode. Do what I say, beckon him with your finger, say you love him, and he'll give you everything. The heated breaths made my ears flush. Any sound that came out was fragmented. His fingers brushed over my neck, applying slight pressure, his voice deep and aggressive. Alex Johnson, you better not be lying to me. I struggled to explain, no, I won't look for anyone else, I'll stay by your side. And I'm really into you now, I truly won't leave. In an instant, the heat above me became intense. He kissed me fiercely, our lips and tongues entwined, breath scorching. The atmosphere became strange, and I widened my eyes. I really had a reaction to Solomon Patel, a man. As everyone knows, straight men don't react to the same sex. He looked at my face, disbelief written all over it, a glimmer of light flashing in his pale pupils. Alex, you. I wanted to cry but had no tears, just nodded. I had only just realized it myself. The eyes above reflected my image. A strange smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. His grip on my neck tightened inch by inch, and a dark, obsessive cloud surged in his indifferent gaze. Alex Johnson, if I find out you go looking for him again, I will kill him in front of you. I had to plead desperately under his overwhelming possessiveness. I only like you now, you're richer and better looking than him, is that enough? I won't run away again, I'm your honey, just yours. As dawn broke, things finally calmed down. I lay sweaty in Solomon's arms. Solomon, why do you have a scar here? He had a scar the size of a fingernail on his collarbone, which was clearly defined and made the scar even more noticeable. Even though he had been hovering above me every night, I had never asked him about it. I got burned when I was a child. Comment section. Ah, he was so unfortunate back then, he almost became a villain. Yeah, a drug-addicted dad, a weak mom, a broken family, and he was sent to an orphanage. Baby, you'll soon understand that his madness has its reasons, just try to understand him for now. I sighed. I just wanted to quickly repay the debts my mother left behind and take her to a quiet place to spend the rest of our lives. As for the rest, I had no intention of understanding or the energy to do so. I closed my eyes and used all my strength to adjust into a more comfortable position to fall asleep. Solomon took a shower, changed his clothes, and prepared to go to work. He licked his lips and looked at me on the bed, his calm eyes filled with a greedy gaze, as if he were looking at a little insect stuck in a spider's web. His sharp brows and eyes hinted at satisfaction, making it seem like he was extremely pleased. Bullet comments. After all, he's the CEO of a top 500 company. He knows his honey is after his money. If he doesn't have any money, how can he keep him? Yeah, hurry up and go to work to earn money for your honey. He's afraid if he stays broke, his honey will run off with some cheap guy. Hey, look at how satisfied he is. That dog of a man must be full now, right? I, who hadn't fallen asleep yet. Just as I lay down, a series of incessant phone rings woke me up. I wearily picked up my phone and frowned at the caller ID. It was Rick Johnson again. A teasing and frivolous voice came from the other end. Alex, why aren't you answering your brother's call? Why does your voice sound so hoarse? I didn't want to talk much with him. Didn't I already transfer the money to you? I've compensated you for what I owe you and my mom. You said that once I paid back $5 million, you wouldn't bother me or my mom anymore. Yes, but you didn't transfer enough. There's interest for the past 3 years. I was so angry that my teeth itched as I struggled to sit up. He clearly said that paying back $5 million was enough, but I was already out of money. How about this? His tone was relaxed, as if he found it quite amusing. I need to go to the new company for my job this afternoon. You should come over and see your brother, and we can calculate the interest together. It's not much, just around 100,000. I've sent you the hotel address. Get here within half an hour, or I'll tell the media your mom's address. Let's see if they swarm like flies. Rick Johnson. I was so mad I could crush my phone. Hey, why so rude? Call me brother. You know, 3 years ago, when my parents found out you were a fake, they didn't want to kick you out. After all, they raised you for over a decade. You were the one who insisted on leaving the Johnson family to suffer outside. So technically, you're still part of the Johnson family. So don't be so rude and call your brother by his full name. Rick Johnson, just wait. I hung up the phone, jumped out of bed, and angrily rushed to the address he sent me. I kicked open the door to the room, confronting the person sitting on the sofa, playing on his phone. He brushed his light chestnut hair back, looking like a golden retriever. He stood up, his peach blossom eyes sparkling but revealing impatience. You're here? What a pretentious act. I questioned him. You didn't mention there was interest. $5 million has been transferred, and I'm out of money now. Rick Johnson lazily stretched. Really out of money? It doesn't matter if you're broke, there's still a way. Do you want to hear it? He walked closer to me. What? Before I could finish my sentence, he suddenly pressed me against the door and kissed me wildly. Alex, let me kiss you for a while, and it'll offset the 100,000. How about it? Be good. I am about to receive tens of millions. Following me is better than your sugar daddy. I was momentarily stunned, and when his cold lips touched my face, I forgot to push him away. When he greedily kissed me again, my breathing quickened, and he trapped me in his embrace. I widened my eyes, and suddenly a jumble of thoughts rushed into my mind. Solomon Patel, I only like you now. I'm only yours. I didn't know where the strength came from. I pushed him away, making Rick Johnson stumble back, who was a head taller than me. I immediately took out the disinfectant from my small bag and sprayed it into my mouth like it was nothing. You! He was humiliated by my actions, his eyes filled with anger. Alex, you are looking for death. I spat at him and turned to leave. What a deadbeat. After returning home, I brushed my teeth no less than 10 times. The reflection in the mirror showed how exhausted I was. My body covered in ambiguous red marks and purple bite marks from last night. At just over 20, my brows were filled with confusion. Mom, oh Mom, can't we just live an ordinary life? Even if you're just a maid, you could have raised me safely. Why take such risks to do something looked down upon by the world? Let me fall from the clouds, shatter into mud. Let me owe others and spend the rest of my life paying for your mistakes, ending up in this situation. My head throbbed, and my body ached badly. I buried myself under the covers and fell asleep until late at night. In the evening, Solomon Patel came home from work and pushed open the bedroom door. A warm light streamed in from outside, and I squinted my eyes with difficulty. Still sleeping? I felt a pair of cool hands touch my forehead. You have a fever, Alex. I randomly reached out for that cool touch, feeling so comfortable. Soon, Solomon embraced me from behind and fed me a bowl of medicine with a spoon. I'm sorry, I let myself go too much last night. You took your medicine, so rest well. I'll go make you some porridge. Once I'm done with this busy period, how about we go to Australia to get our marriage certificate? Solomon, I said wearily. Can you lend me 100,000? He was taken aback for a moment, clearly not expecting me to ask that. But he still replied, of course, all my assets are yours. His tone was as calm as ever. Guilt peaked at that moment, my heart feeling as if someone had gripped it tightly and was tearing it apart. Solomon Patel, I'll hide well after I leave. When you can no longer find me, you'll forget me. After taking the medicine, I felt cold all over again. Yet behind me was warmth, and I leaned drowsily against him. It seemed, this was the first time I felt warmth from him. The scent of cypress wafted around my nose. I greedily inhaled it. I thought, I'm so cold that I'm trying to draw warmth from someone involved in a transaction. Stop crying. He wiped my tears away. You are my husband. No matter what you've done, I will always stand by your side. He leaned in and kissed me, the bitter taste of medicine lingering on our lips. I closed my eyes, not rejecting him. I felt like I was sleeping very deeply, for a moment as if I were in my mother's embrace. Warm yet cruel, it made me want to cry. When I woke up, the sunlight was shining on me. I felt a wave of relief. The fever had completely subsided. There was hot porridge on the bedside, steam escaping through the small hole in the lid, dispersing into wisps of white mist in the air. Solomon Patel had already gone to work. I knew he had fed me the fever-reducing medicine and porridge last night. Later, someone whispered in my ear for a long time. I irritably dug at my ears. What were they saying? So verbose, it must not have been Solomon Patel. It should be the maid. Or perhaps someone's cat had given birth to a litter no one wanted. Or someone's mistress was beaten by the legitimate wife or something similar. My phone beeped, and the calendar reminded me that today was the 15th. The day I regularly visit my mom each month. I put on a turtleneck sweater and got ready to head out. Just as I reached the bottom of the building, I heard a commotion coming from the second floor. Feeling uneasy, I rushed up the stairs in 3 steps. To my shock, the room was filled with strangers holding phones and cameras, all taking pictures. The caregiver was being blocked by several people, struggling but unable to break free. One middle-aged man wearing glasses pointed a camera at my mother's face, his words cutting. It was this nanny who let an innocent noble young master lose the childhood that should have been his, throwing him into an orphanage for over a decade. The culprit is hiding now, living well. Fortunately, she has now received her comeuppance, becoming a vegetable. She deserves it, it's a relief for everyone. My mom's arm had been twisted by someone, leaving bruises. The person lying in the rattan chair appeared oblivious, her face was shrouded in shadow. Though she shouldn't have any expression, I could see her frowning, as if seeking help. A chaotic swirl of emotions crashed against my chest. And my arms, leaning against the doorframe, trembled. We were clearly the sinners, they were stating the truth, and we should feel guilty. But I just couldn't control myself. Everything was because of me. When I came to my senses, I had already kicked that man to the ground and punched him in the face. His glasses flew off, and his phone was knocked away. I was breathing heavily. How could they have found this address? I couldn't think of anyone besides Rick Johnson. We had clearly promised to repay our mother's debt, yet they still wouldn't let us go. I spread my arms to shield my mom. Like a small beast protecting its mother, my eyes red as I roared at them. Everything she did was for me. If you have a problem, come at me. They were stunned by my fury, hesitating to approach. A sigh echoed through the crowd. Amid the chaos, people spontaneously made way. A young man with light chestnut hair stepped forward. I closed my eyes in disgust. He smiled at me, looking like a spoiled rich kid. Mr. Johnson. That's what they called him. His tone was frivolous as he looked at me with amusement. Alex Johnson, you look quite a mess. Then, he waved his hand, and those people obeyed him like dogs. The chaotic room suddenly fell silent. I pointed at him. Rick Johnson, you promised me I could atone for my mother's sins. Why are you here to humiliate her again? Rick Johnson suddenly leaned closer, crossing his arms and grinning mischievously. Did you really think I needed your little bit of money? I was puzzled. What? Alex, I've noticed you looking more to my liking lately. How about this, sleep with me just once, and I'll overlook the past. Today, I'll also cover for you for hitting the reporter. I widened my eyes, finally understanding what he meant. Rick Johnson, you're disgusting. Oh? You find it disgusting? I heard you're being a kept man for some executive to make money. After all these years, why haven't you left? Have you actually developed feelings for a man? Every word at the exit was chewed over by him repeatedly. I was so angry that my fingers were trembling. Don't you know why I'm with him? I'm trying to pay off your debt as soon as possible so I can get away. Every day I look forward to the day I can leave. Am I really falling for a guy as a straight man? How disgusting is that? Since you don't like him, he smirked. Since you've already been with a guy, and your brother is quite good in that department, why not let me take care of you, I was left speechless, wondering why the whole world seemed to be like homosexuality. I started to curse. Is your ear stuffed with shit? I just said I was forced into this for survival. Did you grow pig hair in your ears? Now that I had paid off the debt, I felt brave enough to fight back against his humiliation. Rick Johnson got angry and was about to act. But the next second his gaze passed over me, looking towards the door. A smile appeared on his lips that I couldn't understand. I turned to look. There stood Solomon Patel, staring at me with an intense gaze from the doorway. I was completely stunned. The barrage of comments that hadn't appeared for a long time surged at this moment. Wow, it's still heading towards forced love. The most thrilling scene of the whole story is about to unfold. We intentionally didn't remind him recently. Is that not too good? Baby, I'm really sorry, it's too clean. We really want to see you in those scenes. Baby, well, even if we reminded you earlier, it wouldn't change the direction of the plot. Being forced into love is your fate. Just accept it. I swallowed hard. I was done for. Solomon Patel slowly walked into the room. I watched him approach in despair. But he bypassed me and walked towards Rick Johnson. The orange-yellow sunset shone through the window, falling into his eyes that were as clear as glass, but turned into a rolling mass of dark clouds, like a storm approaching. Like a wolf staring at its prey. Rick Johnson, what are you doing? Solomon Patel took off his suit jacket, lowered his head to adjust his cufflinks, and handed them to the secretary beside him. He suddenly slammed Rick Johnson to the ground, tightening his fists and pounding them into his face. Blood stuck to Solomon Patel's pale knuckles, almost mesmerizing. He had always been composed and calm. I had never seen him like this and was scared enough to retreat to the door. But outside, several muscular men in suits had gathered at some point, blocking my way and sealing the entrance. Rick Johnson curled up, holding his head and wailing. He wasn't shorter than Solomon Patel, but he had no strength to fight back. I crouched in the corner, holding my head, listening to Rick Johnson's cries growing weaker, watching the sunset fade and the sky turn gray. Solomon Patel took the tissue handed to him by the secretary, wiped the blood from his knuckles, and threw it onto Rick Johnson. He walked out the door and, passing by me, closed his eyes briefly and commanded, "Take him back." After saying that, he went downstairs. Several suited strongmen dragged me out the door. I was doomed. Solomon Patel had placed me under house arrest. At night, in the cold and luxurious bedroom, Solomon walked towards me, expressionless, pulling at his tie. "Alex, how many times have you escaped? Haven't you learned your lesson?" He threw me onto the bed. I scrambled to get up and run. But he skillfully grabbed the back of my neck, roughly pressing me down onto the bed, untying his tie to bind my hands behind my back. "You little liar with sweet words. So this is how you toy with my feelings?" His hot breath was against my ear. "I really want to lock you up, every day." He leaned close to my ear, saying something in a sultry and malicious tone. I was so scared that my pupils dilated. His eyes sparkled with increasingly crazy obsession, and his grip on my arm felt like a vice. I trembled under his gaze. The light gray pupils made his eyes appear indifferent, like a lake that never thaws. But only I knew, that was a mire that devours. "Honey, do you know how beautiful you are? Please, don't seek freedom, stay by my side for the rest of your life, okay?" His eyes glimmered with dark, viscous ink, like watching a little bug struggling futilely in a spider's web. A surge of aggression washed over me. I was so scared that I cried out, "Solomon Patel, don't." The barrage surged in an instant. Get your little stool ready, the main story is starting. Finally going to be turned into juice, ha 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 ha. Is there really no way to salvage this? You can only see forced love, but he's clearly the male lead's treasure, okay? They were happily preparing for an engagement abroad, only to hear his honey say he was deceiving him. They're so angry, yet still helping him deal with online bullying. The official accounts of those media outlets have all been shut down. Remedy. They're both pitiful and full of wounds, why must they both suffer? I really can't watch this anymore. The barrage split into several groups arguing. Solomon threateningly patted my lower abdomen, and I shivered from the heat. At the critical moment, a bold comment screamed past. "There's no time to explain. Quick. Baby, say you want to marry him, do it now, that's the only way. Hurry up. Otherwise, you won't want to know the consequences." Solomon Patel. In extreme fear, I almost screamed his name. "Let's get married." The air fell silent for a few seconds, and all I could hear was my nervous breathing. I opened my eyes and met Solomon's gaze. The hostility that once filled him faded away completely, replaced by confusion. He seemed to think he had truly misheard. "Alex, what did you say? Say it again." I wrapped my arms around his neck, looked up at the comments on the screen, and cried, "Solomon, you're all I have left. I want to marry you." A finger brushed away my tears, his large hand soothing my trembling body. As if he were at a loss, shaking along with me. His eyes were filled with disbelief, like a small flickering flame trapped in a glass lantern. I reached up to touch him, and his eyes quivered nervously in my palm. With red-rimmed eyes, I asked him, "Solomon, tell me, is it true that you handled the media situation just like 3 years ago? Did you lock me away to keep me from facing the negative comments outside?" I cradled his face. "Tell me, is it true?" I stared deeply into his eyes, wanting to reach through his trembling gaze to touch the truth inside. "Solomon, what are you really thinking? What I see, is it truly the real you that you want me to see?" The days of confinement ended the day snowflakes began to drift outside the window. I agreed to get engaged to Solomon. So, I attended the high society gala in City A as his fiancée. A comment suddenly popped up, "Baby, you're finally going to discover your husband's true identity." The last time I stepped into such a luxurious occasion was 3 years ago. And today, I was there as the fiancé of the CEO of Patel Enterprises. I saw many familiar faces. The looks they gave me were the same as 3 years ago, sweeping over me until they turned flattering upon seeing the person beside me. In the past, I enjoyed being adored and surrounded by others. But now, I utterly despised this fawning environment. After greeting Solomon Patel, I went alone to a quiet corner to grab a piece of cake. "Why is that kid here too?" A familiar voice came from nearby. I turned to see my mother, standing a few meters away, chatting with someone. On the day I was driven away, she hadn't shown up. 3 years later, seeing her again, the moment our eyes met, the warmth, teachings, and happiness of the past rushed back, igniting warmth in my heart. She was the mother who had cared for me for a full 20 years. Just as I was about to approach her, she seemed to avoid me and walked away. I smiled bitterly. Alex Johnson, what right do you have to beg for someone's love? You did wrong, you took someone else's place, no matter how you are treated, it's what you deserve. You should have gotten used to it by now, shouldn't you? Isn't that the young master of the Johnson family? Oh no, it's a fake. It was that annoying voice again. Rick Johnson, dressed in a light brown suit, swirled his wine glass, grinning maliciously. Two similarly well-dressed but lewd-looking young men followed behind him. He leaned close to me and whispered, "So you're getting engaged, huh? What if your fiancé finds out about your past? Do you think he'll still want you? You'll still be mine then." The comments started again. "It's him again, I hate him the most, such a pervert. Every time he shows up, it's like he's possessed, a natural-born scoundrel. No wonder he ended up in prison, checked by his cellmates." Solomon glanced at me appropriately, said goodbye to a few business newcomers, and walked toward me. Someone behind Rick Johnson spoke up. "That's the fiancé of the CEO Patel. Maybe you should back off?" Rick Johnson nervously touched his still prominent cheekbones and took a step back. "Solomon Patel, let me remind you, your fiancé isn't as innocent as he seems. There's a lot he's hiding from you." Solomon raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "For instance, his character is questionable, vile, and dirty. His lowly mother did something so sordid that her son, Alex Johnson, was able to comfortably take someone else's place for over a decade." Rick Johnson looked at me, confident. That was his leverage against me. He and his mother back then. "I know." Solomon replied, devoid of expression. Rick frowned, looking at Solomon. "Then why do you still want to marry him? Did you help him with the media situation as well? You stand by him, do you really think he and his mother are innocent?" Solomon, not innocent. My heart sank halfway. I heard myself say, it doesn't matter, I don't need to care, should I have gotten used to it by now?" Looking around, those elegantly dressed people were whispering, their expressions mocking and disdainful. They were waiting for me to make a fool of myself, waiting for the show. In the crowd, there were also my once father and mother. A wave of dizziness hit me, and I could hardly breathe. Rick Johnson's arrogance loomed large. "Alex, you have brought shame upon the Johnson family, and even your fiancé won't protect you. Kneel down now and apologize to me and my parents to atone for your sins. Every time you make me feel embarrassed, my life is destined to be overshadowed by his dark clouds. Mom, why do you want me to owe him for the rest of my life and suffer torment? But what can I complain about in front of a poor comatose person?" I closed my eyes. Suddenly, a force lifted my lower back. I turned in surprise to look. It was Solomon Patel. He wrapped his arm around my waist and spoke softly. "It's his mother's choice, not his. Even if he is as sinister and venomous as you say, lacking in virtue, so what? He doesn't need to be perfect, I will love him, so I will always stand by his side." Like a drop of water falling into a soft heart, I heard a plop echo. I looked up at him in shock. He actually smiled down at me. Solomon Patel was smiling at me. It was gentle, like a soft breeze passing by. Oh my gosh. I rubbed my eyes and looked at him again. Who took over his body? The scene stirred with commotion. Rick Johnson looked at me with a victimized expression and accused. "You love him? Can my lost beautiful childhood because of him be compensated?" "Your beautiful childhood?" Solomon held my waist, lowered his gaze, and repeated those words in his mouth, as if he found it very interesting. "Your beautiful childhood?" Solomon suddenly sneered, and when he looked back at Rick, his brows and eyes turned sharp, almost grinding his teeth. "Isn't young Master Johnson's childhood beautiful enough? Isn't happiness built on someone else's suffering still happiness?" Hearing this, a flicker of panic suddenly flashed in Rick's eyes. But he still maintained his facade. What? "Don't slander me." "Secretary David," Solomon handed a silver USB drive to the secretary. "Play this video to help young Master Johnson recall his childhood." The video ended on the big screen, meeting everyone's gaze. Rick Johnson could no longer smile, he stumbled back a few steps. It seemed he had just remembered his own misdeeds from childhood. The foolish head finally understood that the audience had become part of the show. With a hoarse voice, he tried to smash the big screen. Everyone looked at the frantic Rick Johnson with a mix of pity and disbelief. Solomon Patel firmly restrained him, twisting his hands behind his back. He leaned in and whispered a few words in Rick's ear. Rick Johnson looked at him with a ghostly expression. His lips trembled violently. The orphanage, it was you. Solomon raised an eyebrow. Fool, you just realized it now? Rick Johnson was taken away by the police. No one expected that he had long been addicted to gambling, secretly squandering his family's fortune. He had also joined a new company and embezzled tens of millions from the company. He didn't know that the company was the one acquired by Patel Enterprises. This might be the most spectacular high society dinner ever. Because it didn't concern them, people watched the drama unfold without guilt. But I remained silent. I knew how the scar on his collarbone came to be. I looked up at Solomon Patel beside me. How did he grow to this point today? Complex emotions surged within me. That night after taking a shower, I took a long time to come out. My eyes were red like a rabbit's. The bathroom door was forcibly opened by Solomon Patel from the outside. Seeing my red eyes, he rushed over. Alex, you. He has already been punished, it's his own doing, and he's been sent to prison. Stop crying. Solomon Patel, I'm not crying for him. I touched the scar on his collarbone. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt anymore. Then do you hurt tonight? The past pain resurfaces. Do you hurt? Solomon Patel, thank you for saving me tonight. He lifted my face. No, it's you who saved me. We've met before, you gave me a second chance at life. Alex, I've always been watching you. I was confused, always? Yes, always. What others see in you is only a tiny fraction because I know your entirety. So I will never betray you, never leave you. I smiled knowingly. So you fell in love with me at first sight and have been chasing me ever since? He chuckled softly, leaning close to my ear, his gaze intense. Alex, when I first met you, I wanted to tear you apart. Solomon's perspective. When I was 7, my mother sent me to that orphanage, ignoring my heart-wrenching cries. Locking the iron gate tightly. My mother bluntly said, I don't want you anymore, you're a liability. That day, her departing figure stripped away all the colors from the rest of my life. Later, as I grew older, I thought, Mom, couldn't you at least lie to me and say you'd come to pick me up in a few years? That would give me some hope to keep living. I numbly spent day after day in that confined space. Every year around the new year, that couple of entrepreneurs would come to inspect the orphanage. Behind them followed a wealthy young master, the sun shining on his face revealing fine fluff. Like a newborn lamb, his eyes clear but foolish. He wore a brand new down jacket and exquisite sheepskin boots. Even the bottle of milk he casually held made a row of orphans drool with envy. It seemed that the suffering of children his age greatly satisfied his vanity. He handed out candies to the orphans who followed him with the most eager gazes. All the kids surrounded him, except for me, hiding in a corner and refusing to step forward. Alex Johnson pushed me angrily as he passed through the crowd, but he stumbled and almost fell, which only made him more furious as he slapped me. Crouching in the corner like a monster, no wonder no one wants you. I loathed these elites. They came here every year, yet they were afraid that the air here would dirty their noses. They stayed for just a few minutes, took some touching photos, which the media would embellish in the newspapers, and then became praised philanthropists. But they clearly didn't even bother to look at us. Meanwhile, we had to clean day and night for their arrival, learn songs, and memorize blessings. We pretended to thank them and put on cheerful expressions for pictures. I touched my face, licked my lips, feeling the slap that caressed me like feathers. Staring grimly and stickily at that young master. He was so frightened that he stepped back a few paces and fell to the ground. Such a scared look from just a glare, he was indeed a fragile flower raised in comfort. Rick Johnson, trying to please the young master, cornered me in that space and beat me. Punches and kicks had become as routine for me as 3 meals a day. I could still find time to smile at the young master. But that young master was dumbfounded. He widened his eyes, terrified, staring at the cruel world that was like the tip of an iceberg. As the couple of entrepreneurs left, the director led everyone to see them off. But Alex Johnson suddenly sneaked back to that corner and said to me, who was barely hanging on, I lost my cufflink, worth several thousand, it fell in the corner, if you find it, it's yours. Seemingly not reassured, he added before leaving, you can exchange it for money and hire someone to get it back. I found the silver cufflink nearby. Under the sunlight, it gleamed brilliantly, clearly worth a fortune. I didn't feel grateful, I numbly thought it was what I deserved. I didn't use that money to take revenge. At 15, I escaped back to find my mother, and the damp, dark attic was filled with a foul smell. Fat rats crawled around as if no one was there. She had already been beaten to death by that drunkard. The corpse fed a swarm of rats. That drunkard approached me with a syringe, exposing his decayed gums. "Come on, let's have some fun together." He grabbed me and forcefully jabbed the syringe into the back of my neck. That was the first time I felt a different emotion in my numb life, fear. Unfortunately, that drunkard was high and didn't realize that what he had stabbed into my body was an empty syringe. As I followed that drunkard across the street, I saw the flashing red light. In that moment, an uncontrollable malice crawled up my bones like a swarm of ants, densely covering my heart, making me tremble. Blood filled my eyes, the world turned crimson. How wonderful, I didn't have to do it myself. This world was inherently made of evil. Who could confidently say they had never touched anything dirty? People wrapped themselves in layers of shame, pretending to be deep. But everyone knew, it was all the same. I knew I could never be a good person in this life. Just like that year in the orphanage, I was targeted for revenge for trying to save a girl bullied by Rick Johnson. And I was vented upon for 3 years. And that girl became Rick Johnson's girlfriend, joining the group that bullied the weak for fun. Ridiculous. At 18, I used that cufflink as startup capital and earned my first bucket of gold. Gradually, the people around me all became good people. Every night, as I touched that cufflink before sleeping, I realized I seemed to miss its owner more and more. I thought it was my emptiness, wanting to fill my heart with anything at all. At a noble's dance party, I unexpectedly saw an adult Alex Johnson, and I watched him. He looked as beautiful as the plumage of a peacock, arrogant, superficial, and ignorant, merely a facade. He seemed to have forgotten me. Later, he shed all his glamour, losing his dignity at the dining table as he was forced to drink. I watched him. He fell into the dust of humiliation, losing his dignity. I offered him a handkerchief, deliberately exposing my cufflink. He indeed didn't remember. Why wouldn't he remember? Touching that cold cufflink on my suit, I was determined to make him mine. That's right, I was very dark, like a maggot living underground. Like rotten wood that hadn't seen the sun for a long time. I wanted to hold on tightly to anything that resembled light. In those 3 years he spent with me, I felt surprisingly stable and secure. When he wanted to leave me, I thought about how I would keep him by my side at all costs. He deceived me, played with my feelings. I decided to imprison him. But unexpectedly, he hugged me tightly, saying he wouldn't leave and wanted to marry me. My life is a place of suffering, where I am trapped and have never left that endless rain. I am a bird with wet wings. So, I need to confirm that you will always be by my side, forever. Only then can I have the grandest spring in the world. That little liar said he would be with me forever, but he has deceived me, and I don't believe him. So, where he cannot see, I have long been shackled. He can never leave me even a step in this lifetime. Alex Johnson's perspective. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, heavy snowflakes are falling. I am in a warm bedroom with Solomon. I lie on his muscular chest, listening to the rhythmic beating of his heart. My gaze slowly traces those glass-like eyes, that high-nose bridge that stirs my heart, and his tightly pressed lips. Solomon, will you love me forever? Of course, I love you. The heavy snow outside rises and falls. A few comments rush by. TSK, he holds him tightly, filling every crack in his life inch by inch, the two of them. Oh my. I was covering my eyes while watching, I didn't expect there to be more action than the post. Yeah, the male lead really knows how to play. All the little toys and whips ordered before are being put to use. Right? This doesn't just feel like imprisonment, it feels worse than imprisonment. Baby, I'm sorry, I intentionally deceived you before. I'm really terrible, sob sob sob, you guys be good. I'll step back, and this step back means a lifetime. Later, those lively comments never appeared again. I don't know what they were. I don't understand why they wanted to help me. I once lost everything overnight, from the clouds to the mud. All because of an identity. My life is like a drama. My heart is full of wounds, and I have become timid, always worried about gains and losses. So, I yearn for someone who will steadfastly choose me no matter when. I crave such a fierce love, even if that love turns me to ashes. I and Solomon, this weirdo, we are a perfect match. He can never escape from me in this lifetime. Goodbye, you two babies, be happy in your world. The comments gradually became transparent, fading away until they disappeared. I closed my eyes and sincerely said in my heart, you too.